Welcome back. Story 1. I, 30 female, need my fiancé 35 male to forgive me. I'm in a fix. I need advice on how to handle my relationship. I'm supposed to be planning my wedding with my fiancé now. Instead, I'm seeking help on how to smooth things. My fiancé proposed to me 4 weeks ago. And being one to not drag his feet, we commenced wedding plans immediately. Carl is one of the most reserved men I know. He likes his space and quietness. He only gave room for me in whatever I wanted, which is why he opted for a lavish society wedding, because he knew it was what I wished for. He left me to handle things for the most part, except the finances. He was paying for our wedding. That's one of the many qualities I love about him. I thought we were perfect for each other, but the first time he asked me out, me, an extrovert and social butterfly, him an introvert, unlike poles attracting each other. Carl was the epitome of the perfect partner, except that he was not much of a talker. While he showered me with luxury gifts, I still craved the compliments. The romantic words like "I love you," which were my love language. He tried, but he was really poor in that aspect. Carl hired a wedding planner who came highly recommended to assist me in organizing the wedding so it wouldn't stress me. She was an absolute delight on our first meeting, and I agreed she was the woman for the job alongside her brother Jeff, her new partner to her event planning business. That day, we discussed details and decided to check out the listed choice of wedding venues that Lisa, the planner, had outlined in 2 days' time. The next day, Lisa had a home accident that left her leg in a cast and forced her on bed rest. She called to let me know she would be unavailable. I insisted on postponing, but she convinced me that Jeff was more than capable and well-equipped to handle it. So I was resigned to Jeff. I called on Carl so we could go together, as his office was along the way to the place we were checking out. But he wasn't on seat, and his secretary spoke about a meeting he had to attend, so I left. On the way to see the first hall, Jeff tried to engage me in a conversation, probably to make us flow freely. Bless him. But I wasn't in the mood for small talk, especially because I wanted most of my dealings to be with Lisa, whom I felt was more professional, and also because I was disappointed that Carl was unavailable after he had told me he would be free that afternoon. He must have noticed my monosyllabic responses because he kept quiet after some time. When we arrived at the hall, I was immediately taken by it. I explained to Jeff the colors I wanted for the interior while he took notes. He compliments my good taste on the colors I chose and how the purple would blend perfectly with the auburn highlights in my lush dark brown hair. I blushed and tried to turn away, but he continued, telling me how my hair was the most beautiful he had ever set eyes on. He asked if he could touch it, and I let him. When I turned to say thank you to the rest of his compliments, that was when I took a good look at him. He was really attractive, and he smiled exactly like Carl and had a sexy physique like Carl's. I started chatting with him more freely, and by the time we were done with the fourth hall, we were acting like old friends. I realized that I enjoyed his company. We agreed to meet the following day to discuss the next steps outlined in the plan, but we ended up chatting about our lives and dating experiences at the cafe when we met up until the hours had passed by. I was mesmerized by Jeff's eloquence, the way he put words together to convey an information or message, the way he gave compliments on how stunning I looked. He made me feel very pretty, very desirable. I was disheartened when Lisa called days later, having recovered from her injury, to let me know that the venue I was interested in using was unfortunately no longer available, but she assured me that she had discovered a more spectacular rooftop hall in a 5-star hotel that I would love. We agreed to meet at the hotel, including Carl, who confirmed earlier that he would soon be on the way. However, when I called to remind him as soon as I got to the hotel, he said he was unable to meet up as he was still held up at the office. He must have noticed the change in my tone because he apologized profusely and promised to make it up to me. I informed Lisa that I had arrived, and Jeff came to get me from the ground floor. When we got into the elevator, he joked about how the plan to steal my breath away with the venue had gone awry, since I had taken his breath away instead with my gorgeousness. I laughed, and I didn't know how it happened, but Jeff and I started to kiss. It was a casual kiss that transitioned into French kissing. The next thing I knew, our hands were all over each other. We were interrupted by an impeccably dressed middle-aged woman who joined us in the lift. I was a teeny bit glad that she had so that I wouldn't cheat on Carl, but was mostly disappointed because I was so horny and it made me unable to appreciate the breathtaking view of the rooftop. I couldn't take my eyes off Jeff, and I knew it was a mutual feeling because as soon as a call came in for Lisa and she had to leave, after asking me to relay feedback on my final decision, Jeff rushed to my side and began caressing me stealthily and whispering sweet nothings to me. I couldn't control myself anymore, so I asked that we book a room in the hotel. The standard room rates were so exorbitant that Jeff and I had to split the bill. We had sex, and while we laid down, Jeff advised that I use some time to survey the rooftop properly so that I could give feedback to Lisa, having gotten the sexual tension clouding my judgment out of the way. I listened and decided it would make an amazing venue. I didn't want to lose the spot like the other hall I liked, so I called my fiance Carl to let him know that I wanted to make a down payment for it. He didn't pick, so I texted him and he replied that he was cool with it and assured me how he would clear out his schedule to come check it out the next day and that he would reimburse me afterwards for the payment. When I was done with the negotiations, I returned to the room to tell Jeff we had to leave. He drew me to him and said we should make the most of our time since apart from choosing my wedding gown, I had hardly spent time with him in planning. I thought since I'd walk down the aisle soon, I might as well have some fun to mark my last days as a spinster, so I joined him back in bed. We ended up having sex again. It was dusk by the time we were leaving, and we bumped into the elderly lady that interrupted us in the elevator as we exited the room. The next day, Carl, Lisa, Jeff, and I went to the hotel. We were seated and served drinks while we waited for the hotel's managerial supervisor to finalize discussing the requisites for renting the rooftop for my reception. Lisa told me that I should have consulted her before we got a discount on the rental. But Carl, who was in high spirits, told her it was no big deal. He would handle it. Just then, the woman who interrupted Jeff and I in the elevator and walked towards us, accompanied by the waiter who served us. She introduced herself as the supervisor and apologized for keeping us waiting as she had been doing rounds supervising maintenance ongoing in certain parts of the hotel. She congratulated me and moved close to Jeff, who was seated on my left, to congratulate him too. She said she could tell we were eager to be married and she shouldn't have known we were the couple because it's no wonder we couldn't take our hands off each other all through the day before. I froze. I could feel Carl's eyes on me. I dared not look up. The stillness in the air must have helped her realize she said something wrong as she apologized again. Excused herself after telling us that we could conclude later. Jeff tried to laugh off the situation, and it took everything in me not to reach over and slap him. Carl was a smart man, and even if he wasn't, it was so obvious that something was amiss, as even Lisa seemed uncomfortable. Carl stood up and walked out. I rushed after him with Lisa following closely behind. He was already in his car by the time we got to him and he drove off. What do I do now? Can I salvage the situation by denying it totally? Should I tell him the woman was mistaken? Update. I was able to reach Carl on the phone and he told me he's called off our wedding and his family and friends have been informed. His request was that I don't call his line again. Otherwise, he'd be forced to block me. I didn't care because it made no difference, so I continued dialing him. I felt the least he could do was hear me out. He chose to just go with this woman's word over hearing my side of the story. I think he finally blocked me because I've been unable to reach him after that. His security detail said he was out of town when I got to his house and wouldn't even let me in to wait for his return. It felt like a dream. I had as much access to Carl's house as he did. Even when he was on his trips, it was my home too. It is my home. How could Carl bar me from his house? I'm devastated. How could I have let mere compliments destroy what Carl and I have? This is the only time I've cheated. I don't know how I let Jeff's stupid words get to me. What do I do to turn this around? Edit. I finally got to meet Carl through Lisa's help. I had been in contact with her since, and she felt a form of guilt because Jeff is her brother. So since she got a fixed appointment to see Carl, she let me know so I could tag along. As soon as he saw me walk into his office, he asked me to leave, but Lisa intervened and said that although she was barely an acquaintance, she wanted us to try and talk things through. She said her reason for setting up a meeting was to personally apologize to Carl for Jeff's role in this. Turns out Jeff told her everything that transpired. She also offered to refund Carl's deposit, to which he declined. Then she asked that he give me an audience. When she left, Carl told me I had 10 minutes to tell him that everything was untrue, that the woman was retarded, and that Jeff lied to his sister. I told him that it was just one time and I didn't know what came over me. He said he wasn't interested in my tales, that in case he hadn't made it clear before, that we were over, and that if I ever came to his office or house, he would get a restraining order against me. I also tried to talk to him about reimbursing me for the payment I made for the venue, at least while we sorted out things, but he wouldn't budge. He said I could get married to Jeff in it. The hotel has no refund policy and the fee was really high. How do I get my money back? How do I get Carl back?